What exactly is evidence-based teaching, and why is it important for lecturers?
Okay, well, first of all, Mark, I'm pleased that you're doing that, and and that's basically you're doing some additional reading, thinking. Okay, let's have a little think about this. If you went to the doctor,
Right,
and you've got some ailment, and the doctor says to you, well, just go away and do anything, would you be happy paying your $100?
of course not.
No, okay. So what you're working on is that person has knowledge
Right.
that has been based on research, that there's been clinical trials, that if you take this medication for the next week, it may cure or at least relieve
Right.
your symptoms. Now, obviously, we know there are some conditions in medicine that we don't actually know how to treat.
Okay.
But for example, for me, I damaged a tendon, and I went to the doctor and he said, well, take this, and within a week,
Right.
it's actually improved. Now, it's based on evidence, it's based on research. When you get in an aeroplane, do you ever think, well, it's made of metal, there's a lot of people on it, and some of them have got heavy bags, particularly my wife.
Right.
How does that thing actually
Right.
stay in the sky? Now,
Right.
I mean,
I tend not to think about that.
no, that's right. But the reason it typically does, unless something goes wrong,
Right.
is based on evidence to do with principles of aerodynamics. There is a kind of science behind it.
Sure.
Now, what we're now saying with teaching is maybe I might say 40, 50 years ago, when we didn't know that much about the way the brain worked, we didn't know so much about key aspects of the learning process. It was kind of, if you look at education, it tended to be, well, let's be, very discipline orientated, skill and drill.
Sure.
And then you get another kind of shift, a paradigm shift, if you like. Oh no, let students find out themselves, discovery learning. And we can see education's been a kind of creature of fashion, which, I think
Cyclical fashion, right?
and
Okay.
it seems to get now, if you went to the doctor one week and he said, right, you need to do exercise,
Right.
and then you go back the following week and he said, oh no, don't do exercise. Exercise is bad. You need to get as fat as possible.
Right.
And then you do that, and then 3 weeks later you go back and say, oh no, well, you need to meditate. You start thinking, well, hold on a minute. Do these guys really know what they're doing? Is this really professional? Right?
Sure.
We know with medicine now, I mean, they're using MRI scans, there's work on gene therapy, there's lots of things, and this has all come about because medicine, a number of years ago, adopted evidence-based practice. It's not just a question of, oh, we just try anything out, well, let's connect somebody up to some electric current, let's stick some leeches on.
But I suppose somebody might die, and probably that's why they need more evidence-based, right?
Now, with teaching, the purpose, if we look at what evidence-based teaching is, it's looking at what we now know about human learning, the things like those core principles, the research about what kind of method, what combinations work, but always recognising that we're dealing with human beings and you have to contextualise it to the students. So in other words, you can't say this method will always work.
Right.
Because if it's Friday afternoon and the students are tired, nothing apart from tea break or finish early or a bit of humour is likely to work.
Okay.
But even in medicine, that even where there's evidence, certain types of things will work with some patients. So even then, you can't say it's an absolute algorithmic thing in the sense that this drug will cure all of these conditions for all patients under all conditions. If you look at like cancer therapy, chemotherapy, it sometimes completely kills cancer. In other cases, it has no impact.
Right.
And the same thing applies in teaching. That to say, well, if we use a good range of active learning methods, we have very clear objectives, and we don't create too much cognitive load, we teach key concepts, that will tend to work more often than if we don't do that.
Right.
But
So that what it means? Is that what it means by evidence-based teaching? That it actually proves to actually lead to better student attainment, better learning outcomes attainment by the students? Is that what you mean by evidence-based?
That's right. So if we're designing our lessons from an evidence-based point of view, we're more likely to get better results. That doesn't mean, and this is the important thing, that every student is going to be turned on and motivated. But if we do this thing, we're likely to get better when we do it thoughtfully, in a situated manner to the particular student's time of day learning outcomes, resources. We're likely to get much better engagement. engagement, and therefore better student attainment, rather than going in and just saying, oh, well, I'm just going to talk for an hour, I'm going to show 54 PowerPoint slides. That it's a clear case that now we have a strong enough evidence base to design much more impactful learning experiences for students so that they learn better.
Right.
That's
evidence based.
Yeah.
Okay.